everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for May 19th through 25th, 2025. It's having a little bit of a slow day, so we're having a kind of a slow start to this live. But as always, if you're watching live, do say hello. It's always fun to see where people are watching from. I know that we are an international audience. It seems like there's a lot of people in Canada. But for those that don't know who I am, my name again is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the rolling hills of Central Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. And you hear me say it every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%, meaning astrology is time, it's energy, it's the energy of time, and it's how we live time and how time builds around the year, or builds around the month, or even builds around our lives. We've got some big movements this week. Not to say that Gemini season, happy early birthday Gemini, isn't a big movement, but certainly Saturn changing signs is a big movement this week. Later this week, and we can even talk about this more next week, it will go into Aries, as has not been in Aries since 1996, 7, and 8, in the very beginning of 1999. So if you were alive then, go back and reflect on what was going on in those periods of your life. It's not to say that it's going to be the same time. Like, for example, I was like in high school, senior in high school, going into college, and right before Saturn went into Taurus, I was studying abroad in London. So it's a very different time in my life, but it is to find a commonality or to find a common theme. Overall, Saturn in Aries, so it has a 30-year cycle. That's why we have to go all the way back to the 90s. It's lessons in Aries. That's the basic formula for Saturn. We need to learn something about Aries, and Aries is ruled by Mars. We need to learn something about asserting ourselves, or standing on our own 2 feet, or being a leader, or going after what we want, or sometimes knowing that we can do it on our own. Aries is not Libra, the opposite sign of the zodiac. Aries is about the I and the individual, but in deference to Libra, everything in balance. And even Saturn teaches us, as the exalted Libra, Saturn is exalted in Libra, so it teaches us that we need to have balance when it comes with Saturn. So we'll even need to have balance with Saturn and Aries. So it can't be so, individualistic, or so standing on our own 2 feet, that we lose the ability to compromise and negotiate, or to build partnership, for example. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because before that can happen, Saturn is at the end of Pisces. So this week, Saturn is even last week, Saturn is at 29 degrees of Pisces. That is not just the last degree of the zodiac. That is the last degree of not the last degree of Pisces. That is the last degree of the entire zodiac. So there's a lot of deep symbology to 29 Pisces. It comes right before 0 Aries, which is the start of the zodiac, the start of the astrological year, the start of a cycle. And so if Saturn is lessons and perhaps even karma, you could maybe say that this week is a week where we are coming to the end of a great cycle. This could be something personal, and perhaps, maybe not, but there is something symbolic as Saturn gets to the very last degree of the zodiac, that we've reached the end of a great story. We've reached the end of a lesson that we needed to learn. Not just Pisces, but Saturn's time through all of the zodiac, because when I teach Saturn, I have to also teach the zodiac, because the zodiac is the stage and setting for Saturn. It is the stage and setting for time, and for manifestation, and for life to unfold, for example. So it is to sort of feel into, what do you sense is beginning to leave your life? I know that that's a big statement. You're like, I don't want anything to leave my life, Katie. But the thing is astrology is time. So we are looking at the cosmic clock this week and even our own personal clock, and we're looking at the hand that really sets the hour for everybody. Go into a new time. And that can't be changed. That's how it works. So it is to know that we are stepping into a new hour. And this is a new hour through the lens and through the prism of Aries. New beginnings, actions, standing on our own 2 feet, going after what we want, being able to carve our own path, to find our own individuality. Aries. But before that can happen, we're in that sort of liminal waters, that liminal space of Pisces, where something is beginning to leave so that something else can come in. To understand Pisces, and I've used this example before, understand the relationship between Pisces and Aries, it happens every day. You open your eyes. I hope you open your eyes and you get out of bed in the morning. When you awaken, that's the energy from Pisces to Aries. When you have the motivation to stand on your own 2 feet and you kind of get out of bed, that's also Aries. When you take an inhalation and you hold it, that's the energy of Pisces. And then the exhale, which is sort of this going into something new, or perhaps it's the other way around. So we can see this energy, and that's something that's really important. I know, and I think I even said this last week, a lot of you are like, well, what's my sun sign? Like, tell me about my horoscope. But I want you, if I'm doing anything, by doing this every Monday, or even the things that I write, is to help you to look at your life from the perspective of all 12 zodiac signs. The beauty of the zodiac is that it is this ancient device that teaches us about life. The difference between now and ancient times is that we live very different lives. There's very different opportunities that are available to us, very different consciousness. We're not dying at age 30 of communicable, easily curable diseases. I kid a little bit, but we are in a very different time than it was back then. But life is still life. We're still human beings. We still need things. We need connection. And maybe this is a good segue to the fact that the sun is going into, almost at Aries, the sun is going into Gemini this week. So we've got Gemini season. Happy early birthday, Gemini. And I think it's tomorrow, the 20th of May, the sun will go into Gemini. So we're moving into the 3rd sign of the zodiac. When we start the zodiac, Aries, fire, the element fire in its primal state, that spark of life, something wants to initiate. And then we move into Taurus, and that energy wants to take shape and take form. Because Taurus, as an earth sign, is the container for the energies of Aries. And then we take the energy of Taurus season, we've grown new things, we've watched our seeds grow, so to speak, and now we want to move, we want to share, we want to exchange. And so Gemini, yes, it is the sign of communication. It is voice, it's speaking, it's learning, it's curiosity, it's choice. But it is the universe, whether that is our universe, our personal life, or the great universe, it is the multiplicity of life. So Gemini is the sign of the twins. It's duality. It is how you can go out in nature and you see all different varieties of trees, all different varieties of flowers. You see the bees buzzing and they're sort of moving and pollinating. And that really kind of creates that frenetic energy that we sense with Gemini. So that energy, it's a sign, and you may not be a Gemini. You're like, well, why should I care about Gemini? But because you have that within you, you move. I hope, God willing, you move, you try new things, you have curiosity. Or maybe you're like, maybe I need to have more curiosity. Maybe I need to move more. This is your season. So we get out of the predictability and the rut of Taurus. I love Taurus, but sometimes we can get really in the safe zone with Taurus, and then we move, we travel, we explore, we try new things, we read, we communicate, and we connect and socialize. And I wrote about this in my newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter in the show notes. Even physiologically, we are programmed to need stimulation and connection. Because whether it's being in extreme isolation or even children that do not get any sort of, they're not being held, they're not being touched, they're not being cared for, it creates, it stunts the development. And it creates, even in the case of adults, an extreme isolation with no interaction that it can create even mental illness. So we need Gemini as an archetype, as an energy. But, and this is something that we learn as we go further along in the zodiac, the choices of Gemini always make something. Maybe this is a good segue to Saturn. What choices are you making in your life? I'm just making this very general statement. It's not a moral statement, but the choices that we make through Mercury and Gemini become something. And then we see what it becomes when we get further along in the zodiac, especially when we start to get towards the signs that are ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. So Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And that's where we're like, but I need to make different choices in my life, or I want new things in my life. And then the zodiac is a wheel, and so the cycle begins again. Gemini, I want to make a couple of important points, and I talked about a little bit of this last week. So pay attention to Gemini as an energy, as an archetype, and even the area of your life that Gemini governs, because somewhere in your personal astrology, Gemini could be your career sign, it could be a relationship sign, it could be health and wellness. It depends on the sun or rising sign. Because Uranus is going to go into Gemini on July 7th. I realize it's not July 7th yet, but that's a little less than 2 months. And Uranus has not been in Gemini predominantly not in our lifetimes. I realize there are some people that are in their 70s that are maybe watching who have Uranus in Gemini. But by and large, we have not experienced that time. We haven't experienced that energy. So when Uranus goes into Gemini, it's going to be different than it was 80 years ago, but it means that there needs to be a shift, an awakening, a reinvention in how we do Gemini. And maybe to go back to that point about the choices that we make, it is to really have a bigger consciousness of the impact of our choices and the places that we're going, the words that we're using, for example. But these are things that we'll talk about more as we get closer to July. And I know I said this last week, and I realize it's a statement, and I'll say it again. If you are Gemini or Gemini rising, and really if you are a mutable sign, Virgo, Sag, and Pisces, like, hey, get ready. Something about your life is going to change. And I say that because just talk to your Taurus friends, talk to your Aries friends, because when Uranus went through Aries 2010-11 all the way to 2018-19, Uranus and Taurus 2018-2019 all the way to 2025-2026, those signs in their own way, different elements of course, changed. I'm saying this as a Scorpio. I'm a fixed sign, so I'm opposite from Taurus. I'm Sag rising, so I'm like, what's going to happen? Because Gemini is my relationship sign, it's my moon sign, so we'll see. I'll live in an island with my new husband or something. But anyway, so we've got some big things on the horizon, but then there's Saturn. So it's something that I've talked about even in the end of last year. I did my video over 2025 astrology, is that 2025 has a lot of planets changing signs, planets that don't typically change signs. On one hand, we have Neptune now in Aries. Neptune changes signs every 13, 14 years. Has not been in Aries since the 1860s and 70s, so that's kind of a big deal. Now we have Saturn on May 24th, almost May 25th, especially if you are in Europe or Asia. It'll be May 25th for you. Saturn going into Aries, that's another big shift. more so because Saturn really talks about our manifested world, our manifested reality. Then we're going to get into June. Jupiter goes into Cancer. That happens once a year, not into Cancer, but Jupiter changes signs once a year. So that's a little bit more run-of-the-mill. And then also July 7th, as I mentioned, Uranus goes into Gemini. So what we can take from this, at least on a personal level, is like we're looking at our personal cosmic clock, and the hands on the clock begin to change hours. And that means when we look back at our lives, 2025, 2026, we will see some sort of change in the narrative. You're like, what's going to happen? I don't know. But it is to take this energy, and I know that some people are like, oh my goodness, I'm a Gemini. What does this mean for me? Well, maybe it means that the most radical thing that can happen is that you're happy. See, even the keyboard agrees. Or maybe the most radical thing that can happen is that you get unstuck. That's even a word in English, proper English. We can use the energy of the planets, Saturn included. We can use the energies of the planets to get ourselves out of something that we are stuck in. There are things, of course, that are bigger than us, but by and large, Uranus demands radical authenticity. So if we are in a life that is not ours, if we are expressing ourselves in a way where we know that we are trying to be something that we're not, Uranus is going to be like, what are you doing? This is not perhaps who you are. This is perhaps not the direction to go. It's to listen for it. And July 7th is not that far away, weirdly so, believe it or not. So it's to begin to listen for Uranus and Gemini. Let's go back to Saturn at 29 degrees. So there is the sense that this week, and Saturn will return to 29 degrees in September, beginning of September. It will return to 29 degrees in February 2026. So this is not our only shot with Saturn at this very critical degree of the zodiac, but it is to really reflect and to feel into what do we not want to bring with us into this next cycle, in this next part of our life. And sometimes it means to make some decisions, choices, sometimes not easy choices, or sometimes remarkably easy choices. You're tired of holding on to this, you're tired of going this way, you want to go this way. So if you need to reflect, if you need to sit down with yourself, if you need to journal, if you need to sketch out some ideas, there are things that we cannot change. I cannot change the fact that it is very windy right now, for example, but we can change how we show up, or how we exist. To go back to Saturn and Pisces, and I remember saying this even when Saturn got to the end of Aquarius, or even the end of Capricorn, it's to take note, because sometimes we see what the transit is when Saturn gets to the end of the sign. Some astrologers, I don't know if I would bet money on this, but I've heard astrologers say that we sort of receive the gift of our work when Saturn is in a sign. Sometimes it's the gift of our hard work, I hope, but I think it is to really see something start to become real and concrete. The irony is that Pisces is not a real and concrete sign. Of course, it's a real sign. It's not what I mean, but it is water. It's ethereal. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's dreamy. It feels things that it can't really prove to anybody. It's like, you can't prove your dreams to me, for example. But I think the hardest thing, and I'm just being real for a moment, with Saturn and Pisces is to learn some pretty deep lessons about Pisces. Pisces, in the highest of the high, is to make peace, and sometimes really to make peace with yourself, and to make peace with things that intellectually and on paper we should never be at peace at. It's not to say something is okay, but it's not to let it destroy us, for example. Saturn in Pisces is to find compassion. Like I said, high bar. It's not a bar that we're all going to hit. I don't know about me, but I was watching a short documentary on Netflix. I don't know if it's available worldwide, but it's worth tracking down. It's called The Quilters. I think I'm saying that right. Just 30 minutes, but it's about a group of men who are in a super maximum high risk incarceration. I'm not saying the right word, but you get the idea. And some of them are serving life sentences, but they make quilts for foster kids. And that whole act of making quilts, it was the whole thing is Saturn and Pisces. You have to understand that the transit, it's an energy that can transmit itself through our media, like through our art, through our creations. And so, what is Saturn and Pisces about this? Well, Pisces, in a very traditional lens, is prisons and incarceration. That's just one tiny facet of Pisces. But they were talking about, this process of really forgiving yourself and becoming at peace with yourself and feeling like you're giving back. And this idea of redemption and trying to put things better. And if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, the evolution of a human being in those circumstances to really find peace. Again, very Saturn and Pisces, just an example. So, having said that, it is to really sit with the energies of Pisces this week. Saturn says to make time. You have to make time for Pisces. It is to get quiet. It is to listen. It is to listen to your intuition. It is to get out of your head. It is to listen to your heart, listen to your dreams. It is to feel into these bigger themes of compassion and forgiveness and even redemption, which is a big word, I understand, and what has been your personal arc over the past 2 years. Saturn will return to Pisces on September 1st. Well, it will wrap something up until February. You need to stop hitting the microphone. Until February 14th of 2026. But when Saturn is back in Pisces in September, we will have an eclipse in Pisces. Another good segue going back to this to Gemini season is that this week we are also transitioning the lunar month. So we will have, when I do this next week, we will have a Gemini new moon. And this new moon brings us into a lunar month that puts us 3 months after the eclipses and 3 months before the eclipses. I have seen over and over again that when we are 3 months before, 3 months after, we can see the energy of the eclipse. We can see that maybe June is going to be a transition month, which is interesting because now we'll have Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries. And on June 9th, we'll even have Jupiter in Cancer in the last Jupiter-Saturn square. So we may start to see what these eclipses are about and to start to pay attention, especially as we get closer to September, because the Virgo new moon on August 23rd will be almost exactly square Uranus. So that's another conversation for another time. So it's a lot this week. Maybe a lot of emotions are coming up. Maybe I know that it's in the Netflix documentary that I just mentioned. There's sort of this need to find meaning and purpose. They talk about that and how even quilting can help somebody in those circumstances to find meaning and purpose in their lives. That's Pisces. And meaning and purpose can come in very small ways and small acts, and sometimes even very grand acts. So it's to sort of see how this has unfolded in your life over the past couple of years. So because Saturn is going into Aries, I am doing a webinar. It will be on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I always record it because I know that we are all around the world, and West Coast, East Coast, Asia, Australia, and you can get the recording if you can't watch live. And I really want to get more into the deeper parts of Saturn, because me as an astrologer, it's not to tell you what's going to happen. It's to inspire you to look at yourself as part of the cosmos. As above, so below, so within, so without. Saturn's not doing anything to you, even though it's an easy trope, and I certainly say these words. but it's to show you how the cosmos is reflecting something that you can't see. Time, the energy of time, for example. And you cannot see time except when you can. And that's where we are reminded that Saturn governs time, karma, and particularly aging. That's where we can see the energy of time. Otherwise, typically time is invisible. People say to me, oh, time's made up. I was like, time is not made up. You are aging. So hopefully well. But anyway, join me. You can go to my show notes. You can go to empoweringastrology.com and you can sign up for the webinar and you can get the replay if you can't watch live. And of course, we will go into what this means for each of your zodiac signs. So Saturn is a big arc planet. Your life, God willing, is a big arc. It's not made up of a day or a month. It's made up of multiple years. And it's to just a reminder that your life is a body. You have a body, your life has a body, your life has a time that it will unfold, and it is to unfold within that time, if that makes sense. So Saturn, Aries, new beginnings. And again, you can sign up for the webinar in my show notes or my website, empoweringastrology.com. Before I forget, I also did an interview with astrologer Deborah Silberman. That's on YouTube. It's also on my website, empoweringastrology.com. It's also on Spotify. I interviewed her about her new book. We also talked about AI, Pluto. We also talked about Uranus and Gemini, and even into the more deeper esoteric side of Saturn. So you can also find that on my website, empoweringastrology.com. So let's go into each of the 12 zodiac signs. I'm going to talk about Gemini season and what perhaps Saturn at 29 Gemini is beginning to impart to you. So let's start with Aries. Aries, so Saturn is coming to the end of its time in something called your 12th. We've been talking about this for the last 2 years, but it's important because the 12th represents the end of some sort of story, chapter, or cycle in your life. The 12th has brought you inward. It has highlighted spirituality for you over the last 2 years, and or a need to really seek and find meaning and purpose, to clear things out, and for some of you even to find peace, to forgive, and to find compassion. The role of the 12th is to remind you and everybody that we can't take it with us, that our experiences and what we have sort of built on a deeper level is what we can take with us. We cannot take the material with us, for example. And one of the examples that I've used throughout the past couple of years explaining this to you is that it is as if the last 2 years have been like going through the boxes of your life, the boxes of the last 30 years. So this week, it could be that last push to get very clear about what you are bringing with you into the next big chapter of your life and what you are not bringing with you into the next big chapter. To be fair, Saturn will return to Pisces September 1st until February 14th of 2026. So you got time, but June, July, and August are really a lens for something new, even if it's not 100% clear what that is. This could be new beginnings, new initiatives, new drives, sort of your life coming into a very different focus, for example. Saturn is still in Leo, which is something called your 5th sign: creativity, self-expression, children, joy, fun. You do have a time shift in the middle of June. We're not there yet, but really you're sort of on the big cusp of something and a big change in your life. Saturn, perhaps this week, is trying to impart some wisdom to you. But the thing about the 12th is that it's not material, it's not intellectual. You have to listen to it, you have to feel for it, you have to intuit it. So give yourself time to meditate, to rest, to open up your dreams, and to listen to what Saturn has to say to you, because maybe, and this is true for all the signs, Saturn is giving us notes. You may get some notes. Saturn's like, why are you still holding on to this? It's not to bring it into 2026, for example. Maybe Saturn's like pat on the back. You get the promotion, you get the recognition. Not with the 12th, it's not for your ego, it's something deeper. But again, it's to listen to something, listen for something that is uniquely for your life. Totally blank. Taurus. So we are just about to leave your season. Happy birthday if today is your birthday. You're sort of coming into the end of your season, of course. So when the sun goes into Gemini, it brings you into something called your second sign. The second sign is about money and income, which you're like, I'm Taurus. Isn't that supposed to be what Tauruses are about? So this is sort of continues this time where it's about focusing on your material life. Typically when the sun is in Taurus, or even when the sun is in the first house of your Taurus rising, it's a new beginning. But what do these new beginnings get invested into? What do you value? What's of worth to you? And certainly with some of the movements that we had over the past 4 weeks, it is to reframe what's truly of value and importance to you. I spoke a lot in the introduction about Uranus, and to be fair, Uranus, we had the Sun-Uranus conjunction this past Saturday, 2 days ago. You are coming to the end of this big time where Taurus has needed to change and to reinvent. On the cusp of Uranus going to Gemini in July, it continues this time to really reinvent what you value, what you want to invest in, what's important to you, what you need. But we're not there yet. Saturn has come to the end of something called your 11th sign. The 11th sign is about friends, community, society, humanity, social issues, and social causes. It is a big, broad space. Certainly our friends, our social network is something that isn't so abstract, unless you have no friends, I hope not. But Saturn is giving you notes now that Saturn's at 29 degrees of Pisces. Saturn through the 11th, the past 2 years, depending on who you are, may have not been so easy with your social network. Who were your friends in 2020, the start of 2023? Who are your friends now? The role of Saturn is for you to get very clear about the type of people that you want in your life and the type of people that you want to invest in your life. For example, maybe you now have stronger friendships, or maybe you sort of rearrange your social network. You're like, I really like these people. Maybe these people are toxic and negative. Or maybe you have used Saturn's time to get more involved in a social issue or a social cause, to get involved in your community. Because the role of the 12th is also to open us up to the world and in the interconnectivity of everyone and everything. So it's not to say that anything is going to happen this week, and sometimes Saturn can be very subtle, but again, it is to listen for it. Because Saturn, there's always a lesson with Saturn. It's not punitive. It's not just to sort of go through lessons for no reason. It's always to build something. And if you've gotten to this point and you're like, I have like a rich network of friends, I really spent time cultivating and investing in the people that are of high quality to my life. I love them. They're like family. Or, with Katie, it's really been about spending more time in my community and really building a sense of connection to the people who I really value, and we share the same values. Then great. If you're like, it's been none of the above, then maybe this is where there can be still some shift when Saturn comes back into Pisces in September. Gemini, happy birthday, Gemini. I realize we're almost there, but it is your season. So, I talked about this last week, and I heard from Gemini clients or Gemini rising clients, like, what, Uranus and Gemini. How do you begin to prepare for something that on some level, it's like you can't prepare for it? The analogy I can best use, and I think I used this with a client of mine, it's like to prepare for Uranus and Gemini is to prepare for a country you've never been to. You can learn the language, you can watch all the movies, you can learn the films, you can learn about the culture. We can intellectualize Uranus as an influence and what it could mean for Gemini, but it will be a new country for you. It will take you into spaces within yourself and within your life that you've never been to. It may reinvent things. It may spark new awarenesses, new desires, a need to do things differently, and Uranus being Uranus, a need to break from the past. High level Uranus, it's new consciousness. New consciousness is not just new information, it's a whole shift of how you see things. Again, it's another country, but we're not there yet. But it is to begin to listen for Uranus, because we are less than 2 months away. Now we're at Saturn at 29 degrees of Pisces. Pisces is your career sign. It's been 2 years of Saturn saying to you on some level, Gemini, what do you want to be when you grow up? You're like, I do want to be this. I don't want to be this. And so what is Saturn saying to you this week? It is to listen for Saturn. It is to feel for Saturn, because this could be a week where we are seeing the result of our work, our hard work in our professional life, or taking responsibilities seriously, or working on our public life, our public reputation. We have stepped into a role of status and power. We are using power responsibly, of course, I hope. Or maybe it's the opposite. So what have you been building the past 2 years? What are the responsibilities that you have taken on? How has that made you grow and mature in the past 2 years? Are you clearer? Are you more committed to the role that you play in the world? Even if it makes shoes, or you're a stay-at-home parent, or you farm, like whatever it is that is your sort of what you have become in the world. So Saturn is giving you, again, some feedback. If it is, it's not to say it's going to be negative feedback, but Saturn will return to this space September all the way to February of 2026. And so whatever is unresolved or unfinished, or whatever you feel needs some fine-tuning, don't worry, Saturn will bring you back to this space. Curiously, at the same time that we will go into the next round of eclipses in September, we'll have Uranus and Gemini by then. So that is a time, because you're going to have an eclipse in Pisces on September 7th, and even an eclipse in Virgo September 21st in your 4th sign of home and family, where your life is beginning to pivot. I can go through sort of the mental checklist of Gemini risings. I know some are getting married. They're setting up household with a new partner. They're making changes in their life. So it could be along those lines, or it could be something completely different. But yeah, let me know, like, how have you felt Saturn in your 10th? It's been a big time for Geminis, and do you know what you want to be when you grow up? Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week the moon is going from Aquarius all the way to Taurus. So for you, Aquarius is your 8th sign, your 8th room. So things might be a little emotional or heavy as you start the week. And then we get into Pisces. Around the middle of the week, Pisces is your sign that really tries to open you up to the world. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? Travel, exploration. The moon is actually going to meet up with Saturn around Wednesday, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly, and because I think it transitions into Aries on Thursday. So Wednesday into Thursday, you may get your notes. I've been using this terminology, or this sort of idea, is that Saturn at 29 degrees is giving you some feedback over the work that has been happening over the past 2 years. What has this work been on? Saturn in the 9th, for some people, it's about faith. The faith of everything's going to be okay. The faith of, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? Or what's my mission and my purpose? How am I fulfilling that in the world? I need to get very clear about what is true and what is not true. It's not to do these things like capital T truth, or capital like this is the only way, no other ways are wrong. But Saturn is trying to shape your compass, metaphorically speaking, during this time, And for some Cancers, it has been about education. You've been getting a degree, you've been working on higher education, or for some Cancers, it's been about travel. But education and travel and exploration and what is right and what is wrong, quote unquote, it is a desire for us to go outside of ourselves, because when we get to the ninth, we're moving into a part of the zodiac that is outside of us. I don't mean through a relationship, I mean the world. So on some level, the last 2 years have been about the world and your role in the world, or how you see the world, or how you participate in the world. For some, it's about religion, the role of religion in your life, and really getting very clear about the frameworks and the beliefs and the structures, Saturn, that you want to really live your life according to. Everybody is different, of course. So Saturn on some level is, again, giving you notes. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? And to pay attention, because there will be an eclipse in this space in September. Saturn will return to this space in September. And sometimes the physical results of what we believe in, what we stand for, we write a book, we get a degree, we get involved in something in the world, we do podcasts. Everybody's podcast. I have podcasts these days. But it is to really embody something, not to do it rigidly, but we all need a sense of something that really shapes our life as sort of a framework and guide us and hopefully helping us to be better people in the world. And so the question is, what is that for you? Listen for Saturn, listen for the notes, and Saturn will come back here, and we have time September all the way to February to rework whatever we have discovered when Saturn was in Pisces. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and the sun is going into Gemini, your third sign. And so the next 4 weeks in general are going to be, did I say third sign? I meant 11th. The next 4 weeks are going to be a time to discover, to travel, to explore, but also to get involved in the world, your community, social issues, social causes, to open up your eyes, and maybe even to think and dream of the future. That said, we are looking at Saturn's coming to the end of something that I've been calling the past couple of years your 8th room. Saturn's role in the 8th is not easy. And I said this to you 2 years ago, but kind of like how I was trying to describe Uranus and Gemini. It's like trying to describe a country that you may or may not have been to before. We need the 8th. The 8th is what transforms us. The 8th is what reveals us. And it's through this inner alchemy that we discover something that we take with us to the 9th. That will be Saturn Aries for you. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? But Saturn in the 8th has been a deep inner psychological and in some levels a spiritual alchemy. There have been themes about trust and intimacy and vulnerability. How have you opened up the past couple of years? Have you felt more like you're occupying a deeper space within yourself? Do you have a more powerful relationship with intimacy or trust or vulnerability? Or do you trust nobody? How have you worked on yourself over the past couple of years? My sort of how I talk about Saturn in the 8th is that we're not meant to do Saturn in the 8th alone. It's been a time to find guidance, to really have emotional support and even psychic support as we go through this space. The deeper revelations about the 8th is that this is the currency that can never be taken from you. The wealth that you discover in the 8th becomes the wealth that supports you your whole life, except it's an emotional and it's a spiritual wealth. For some Leo risings, it is about money and finance. It is about debt, the debt you've accrued, physical debt, emotional debt, spiritual debt. It could be about the finances and legacies and assets. It's for you to sort of see and listen, more importantly, to listen to what is really beginning to come into focus over this week. Perhaps Saturn is giving you some notes. These are the things that you need to go back to. Or great job. It could be both. But Saturn, especially in the 8th, we need to feel into it. So maybe you need to get quiet this week. Maybe you need to journal. Maybe you need to talk to a trusted counselor or therapist or guide. And that really can be a place where you can start to reveal the last 2 years for yourself, because again, there's a power that's been revealed to you over the past couple of years, and the question is, what are you going to do with it, Leo? Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is going into Gemini this week. So we've got until the 25th, so that's Sunday, we've got Mercury's last leg in Taurus. Now, typically Mercury in Taurus is cautious. It wants to prepare, it wants to strategize, it wants to be friends with Scorpios because you're trying to out-strategize everything. But for you, it's a fellow earth sign, and it's a sign that you've needed to really look towards the world and figure out what you believe in and what you stand for, but also get very pragmatic and also really be true to your word. Not that you wouldn't, Virgo, but Mercury in Taurus is always about the reliability and consistency of what you have to say and your ability to follow through. So has there been follow through, Virgo? That said, let's go to Saturn at 29 degrees of Pisces. It's been a big last 2 years. Typically when Saturn goes through the sign that's opposite our sun or rising, Saturn's in the seventh of relationships. But depending on the person, depending on the chart, it could have been a past 2 years where major personal milestones have happened. Maybe there has been a marriage, or maybe there has been the start of a relationship, or maybe there has been the start of a major chapter of your life, or maybe it has been a time to work on an existing relationship or relationships in general. It's like for Virgo rising, you've been looking at the clock and it's been consistently pointing towards relationship, focus on relationship, build relationship, put things in order, have things in balance, clear out anybody that's toxic, and that's been the story the past 2 years. On top of that, you had an eclipse here at last September, and you will have an eclipse here in Pisces. This will be on September 7th. So it will continue to be about relationships, but listen for the notes that perhaps Saturn is giving to you. No, Saturn loves relationships. Saturn reminds us that we can't do life alone. So maybe this is like, oh, actually, I need to make a commitment to somebody, or I need to prioritize certain people in my life and not certain people in my life. It will be specific for you, but typically Saturn is quote unquote traditional. I don't mean you need to live a traditional life. No, but Saturn again says we can't live alone in the woods. We need connection, we need relationship, we need to build community, we need to be able to rely on people, for example. And for some of you, especially those who are Virgo suns, you've had Saturn opposite your sun. So Saturn has been really sort of saying to the Virgo suns, like, you need to get your act in order. And you're like, but I'm a Virgo, I always have my act in order. But maybe a lot of responsibility has come your way. Maybe you have felt like there's been a lot of things to work on and to deal with. So just listen for it. Sometimes, especially, and I'm saying this with a lot of love, my mom was a Virgo, but Virgos are like Scorpios. They want to be in charge of everything. And maybe part of the irony of Saturn opposite your sign is like, how do you actually allow other people to be able to share the weight with you? Question mark, question mark. But these are all things to listen for and to feel for as Saturn gets to the end of Pisces this week. Libra. So Saturn is coming to the end of something called your sixth sign. And the sixth sign, it's a pretty like real world, nuts and bolts, operational space of your life. Like you get up, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you take the dog out, you have coffee, whatever your routines are. But this is a space where we really need to ground in all the sort of different things that we need to do on a day-to-day level. Now, it doesn't sound very glamorous, but it is essential. If you have ever moved to a new place and you suddenly realize, shoot, like I gotta figure out where to get the groceries, how to put everything away, like how am I, like my life feels so like crazy at the moment because like I don't know where the toothpaste is. I'm making a joke, but this has sort of been this time to really change the flow or change the operations of your life. Maybe things look different than they did at the start of 2023 versus now. Like maybe you became a first-time parent, so your life and the operations of your life look very different now than they did at the beginning of 2023. Of course, that option is, or that example is not relevant to everybody. For some Libras, this time has been about health, wellness, how you take care of your body, how you inhabit your body, because if you are constantly in your head, you are not in your body. So it's been to really change the relationship with your physical being, your physical life, your health and your wellness, but also to bring intentionality to your life. And to do things and to create rituals and to create follow through and to create order and to clean things out. But this is for you to see how this is relevant in your life. Regardless, Saturn at the end of Pisces is giving you notes. It's to listen to it. I've already been saying this because Saturn going to Aries is a big deal because it goes into your relationship sign. So you're sort of on the cusp of a big shift. We will talk about that at another time. Venus, your planet, continues to be in Aries, kind of in advance of Saturn, and even Neptune's there too. So relationships is another lens about how relationships are shifting in your life. But listen to what has been happening, not literally, because maybe Venus has been pointing some things out that Saturn will then return to when Saturn gets into Aries, June, end of May, June, July, and August. Scorpio, so Saturn has come to the end of something called your fifth sign. I love the fifth sign. The fifth sign is the sign of play and creativity and self-expression. You're like, this is great. But it's also a sign that talks about a need to find passion, like the things that light you up and give you joy and give you pleasure. And if life is work, 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 do, it is possible that the fifth room is a room that you don't go into very often. But the idea is that the past 2 years, on one level, you've needed to really take this space seriously, because wherever Saturn is, that area of your life is a priority. We can't escape it. The priority has been since 2023, almost said 2003, is to make yourself a priority. To make your talents, your gifts a priority. It is to know your value and worth. For some Scorpios, it's been about pregnancy and children. I realize that's not going to be everybody, or just perhaps even children in general, but children also in the sense of the things that we create are the best parts of ourselves. Here comes the wind. So Saturn is giving you notes. Maybe you have a stronger sense of self-worth. Maybe you have a stronger sense of your talents, gifts, your abilities. Maybe you have a stronger sense of taking yourself seriously and perhaps even hard-earned confidence. Listen for Saturn. Saturn is either is giving you notes or it's giving you a pat on the backs, or like, great. Maybe you're really like have something to show. Like you're a creative person. You're a creative Scorpio, and you paint, you write, you do something else that's creative. It doesn't have to be artistic in general, but maybe you have a stronger sense of who you are, I hope, over the past 2 years. Now Saturn will come back to this space on September 1st, where you will wrap up the transit September 1st all the way to February 14th of 2026. That said, Mars, speaking of taking yourself seriously, that's my doggy, Mars continues to be in Leo. Leo is your 10th sign. So the Mars has been pushing you into a public space in your personal astrology. Mars does not leave this space until the middle of June, so it continues to be hustle time, to take on responsibilities, to step into a role in your public life, your career. It is to maybe even get recognized for something, but it's kind of funny because it's a bit of hard work. But taking some clues from Leo, taking some clues even from Saturn in your fifth, like, don't forget to do the things you love. Don't forget to prioritize the things that actually fuel the work, because if you don't, Scorpio, you get burnt out. Sagittarius. So Saturn is coming to the end of a major transit in your personal astrology. It is now at 29 degrees of Pisces, and Pisces forms the base and foundation of your personal astrological chart. Pisces holds up your life. And so the past 2 years, Saturn has been pointing towards home and family. You have to remember that wherever Saturn is, that area of our life is a priority. We cannot escape it. Perhaps over the past 2 years, you have moved. You've had a major move, or maybe you have started a family, or maybe it's been a little bit more abstract and emotional. Where is home and who is home? But even if it's abstract and emotional, Saturn still says to shore up this space in your life. And that's why typically there can be a major move, but the major move represents the new phase and chapter of your life. So what have you made? What has transpired? Have you seen any major shifts in the past 2 years? Because it's typically along the lines of how Saturn works. Interestingly, because the 4th is opposite the 10th. The 10th is the highest point in the chart. The 10th is your career, your public life, and your public reputation. But the priority of the chart, this is a general level, of course, for Sagittarius, isn't your professional life. It's not to say that you don't have a career or things have not been happening. But Saturn has been saying to you for the past 2 years, don't forget about the things that actually support you and nourish you and hold up your life. Because if it is work, if you're doing 17, 18-hour days and you are never at home, or you're Sag and you're always traveling and everything is great, it's always a vacation, but Saturn is saying to you, but you need to put down roots. You need something that's really going to hold up your life. It will be specific to your life. Saturn is typically traditional. I don't, put that in air quotes because it doesn't mean you need to live a traditional life. Live your life. But Saturn reminds us of the things that are important. Saturn will return back to this space September 1st until February 14th of 2026. So listen for the story. It's a pat on the back, or it is a list of, like, a checklist of things that we need to work on. But this is a point of transition in your astrology. September is another point of transition. February is another point of transition for you, because that's when Saturn kind of comes in and comes out. And all of this is in preparation of Jupiter changing signs as well. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But that with the eclipses is just a big time to be a Sagittarius, and one where, again, the priority has been on family and home and even relationships. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet. So Saturn at the end of 29 degrees is giving you notes. Like, how can Saturn give me notes? I'm Saturn. But Saturn, to be ruled by Saturn on some level sets a higher bar for Capricorn. And that's kind of why Capricorn is a sign that's known for responsibility and maturity and being the boss. Of course, Capricorns come in a lot of different flavors. But it's been an interesting past 2 years, and we've talked about this, but it's just to sort of reiterate that Saturn's time in Pisces. Pisces is a very different sign on paper than Capricorn is. Capricorn is matter, structure, the material world. It is the quote-unquote bones of your life. It is time, duties, and responsibilities. And Pisces is the ethereal, the emotional, the spiritual. You cannot touch Pisces as an archetype. You cannot touch emotions. I can convey emotions to you, But on some level, the past 2 years have been about a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. It's enough to build your life. It's enough to tick the boxes and to make achievements and be like, okay, good. I've got the 401k. I've got the title at work. I've got the this. I've got the that. But for what? So Pisces has brought a very existential and even a deeper sense of search for meaning and purpose, and sort of the need to answer existential questions the past couple of years. The thing about existential questions is that they are unique to you. There is no uniform answer. I wish it were like, again, like ticking a box, or just, sometimes people are like, Katie, just just tell me what to do. I cannot tell you what to do. Pisces has to be revealed to you. And Pisces has revealed itself to you in the quiet moments, in the moments where you are just about to fall asleep, or you are just waking up, or you are wide awake at 2 a.m. trying to figure out your life, or whatever it is. That's Pisces. What has revealed itself to you in those moments? For some of you, Saturn in Pisces, because Pisces is the third sign, has been to focus on education. You've been taking more classes the past 2 years. There's been more of a curiosity, or in some levels, to do things differently. To focus on the third on some level is to put the degree to the side, or put everything that you thought was true and right to the side and look at it from a different perspective. It's to get back to basics, and it's to, sometimes literally, to take classes or to read things, but in many cases it's just a metaphorical and even spiritual Pisces. So what have you discovered? How do you see things differently? Has there been a priority shift the past couple of years? Saturn going into Aries, we've talked about this, but it's a big shift for you because Aries is a fellow cardinal sign, and it puts the focus on home and family. And wherever Saturn is, even though Saturn rules you, and it rules, you could say rules everybody, but Saturn says that home and family will be a priority for the next couple of years. But that said, Pisces for you is also about choices. And on some level, the sort of the deeper small print of the past 2 years is to really take a second look at the choices that you're making. Because you may be, as we're coming to the end of Saturn's time in your third, about to commit to something, or about to make a choice about something that will set you up for a bigger story and path in your life. And you may even feel like you're at two, is it this way or that way? And if you're thinking, well, Katie, just tell me which way to go, I'm going to go back to Pisces. It has to be revealed to you. It's probably not going to be an intellectual, like, oh, go this way, it makes sense on paper. You go this way because this is the way your heart is telling you. You know, just like this, that that's the way to go. Even if your brain jumps in, it's like, wait a second, maybe I should do some more research, maybe I didn't. Get quiet. Listen to your intuition. That's what part of what you've been cultivating the past 2 years, and really feel into what is the right way for you to go. Is it this way or that way? And maybe, that's the grace of Saturn coming back to Pisces, is that you're like, oh wait, actually you need to make some changes. That's Saturn going back into Pisces September all the way through February 14th, 2026. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is coming to the end of its time in Pisces. So we've been talking about this, and Saturn governs you. Saturn governs your life, especially if you're Aquarius rising. So the second sign of money and income is where we have found Saturn for the last 2 years. But the irony in all of this is Saturn has been in Pisces, and Pisces typically has different values and different wants and needs that go beyond the material plane. So how do we reconcile the both of them? On some level, it has been 2 years of reframing your relationship with money, matter, and the material plane. It's not enough to just work, do, invest, a 401k, get the title, get the rewards, or it's to really think more deeply about what you're investing your time and money in. what's really going to support your life. And maybe what you've discovered in the past 2 years is that what you want or what you feel is of value is counter to the narrative of perhaps what somebody else is telling you or even how you were raised. It depends. Saturn typically is a quote-unquote traditional sign. Doesn't mean that you need to live a traditional life or you need to follow some sort of traditional values. But Saturn says, bare minimum, we need a roof over our head. We need stability and income and security that comes with it. We need resources. And on some basic and fundamental level, for Aquarius, it has been to work with Saturn on that level. But it's also with Pisces and sort of whispering in your ear, for what? And maybe you have become more generous in the past 2 years. Maybe you have wanted to give back. Maybe you're like, yes, but I want to create a stable life for myself. But I also want to help other people because there is a desire for altruism in general with Pisces. That maybe there has been investments and purchases, or maybe you have bought an orphanage to help the less fortunate, who knows. Or maybe you have made a career change because you want it to be more aligned with a life that you want to create that is more in alignment with your values, for example. If it's not money in the material world, it could be just something as abstract as security and stability. Maybe security and stability is something that has been previously elusive, and Saturn has said to you the past 2 years, how do we work to find stability and security? You're like, I don't know, Katie. But despite that, it is to anchor into Saturn's time. And even though Saturn governs you and governs your life, and my joke is probably Saturn governs all of us, Saturn is still giving you notes. What has the last 2 years made for you? A budget, a sense of the things that you want to invest your time in, a deeper sense of self-worth and value, an ability to set boundaries and to say no, all the above. You know your life. Even though Saturn talks about pretty basic things like stability and security and resources, but your life is your own, for example. Listen for Saturn, feel into Saturn. Maybe it's been a little bit liminal the past 2 years because Aquarius is typically not a feet on the ground type of sign. It'll start to feel a bit different as we go into next week when Saturn is in Aries. It's a different element for you. It's a time of new beginnings, initiative, and moving forward. So there you go, Aquarius. Pisces. See, I didn't forget you this week, Pisces. Saturn has come to the end of your sign, and what a past 2 years it has been. Now, it will have been different depending on who you are and the life that you live and the age you are, or whether you are an Aries sun, Pisces sun, or Pisces rising. In general, the past 2 years have been a time for you to really step into something. It could be a higher level in your career. It could be, I'm thinking of some celebrities that have gotten awards the past, not that celebrities matter, but just an example, who've gotten awards for their work and perhaps even the performances. That's just an example. But what has been made the past 2 years, Pisces? Because this has been a time to really step into a new chapter, to forge something, for you yourself to be forged the past 2 years. And on some level, a Pisces has needed to know that they can do it on their own. The irony, even though Saturn loves relationships, and Saturn reminds us that we can't live in the woods alone, sometimes we want to, but it is to find the balance between relationships and you. Because if you haven't been able to do things on your own, then there's been a real push to find your maturity the past 2 years. Or you give everything to everybody else, but what about you? Do you take care of yourself? Do you take care of your own needs? Maybe on some level, Saturn's been teaching you about boundaries the past 2 years and the ability to say no to people. And that's not always what Pisces is well known for. to say no to people, to say yes to the right people, to work to step into a role, to feel more mature in your life. And Saturn has likely come with major personal milestones. I could sort of go through the list of Pisces risings in my head, and there's been big life milestones. There have been marriages. There's been starts of relationships. There's been things with family. There's been having to take on more responsibility with a family member, especially that family member is getting older. Listen for Saturn. Saturn is giving you notes, or Saturn is giving you a pat on the back. And to listen for Saturn, because it sort of represents this process of finding yourself and becoming yourself, that then Saturn will return to on September 1st to do that last leg of Saturn in Pisces from September 1st until February 14th. Maturity, we live in a life where unless we go through the pushes to find our maturity, we don't grow. We don't take responsibility. I'll give you an example. I remember the first time I taught an astrology class. It was 2013, and I'm sitting in the room, and the students are there, and my mentality up until the moment where the light bulb went off was like, oh, I'm here to take an astrology class. And then the light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm the teacher. Light bulb. And that is a space that I had to very quickly step into, because people paid money, not a ton of money, but people had paid money to be in that room so I could teach them something, hopefully about astrology. And that was a space that I had to find within myself, that I was now mature enough or new enough to step into a role to teach somebody something. This is just an example. So what roles have you needed to step into now that you have an example? Because if you're not quite sure, or if things are a little loose or shaky or out of order, again, Saturn comes back to Pisces. And this will be on September 1st. So take note, Pisces, if it's been a big time in your life, this is all in advance of another round of eclipses in September, an eclipse in Virgo on September 21st, an eclipse in Pisces on September 7th. So it's just a big time in your personal astrology. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week. We went long, I went late. It's already almost 7:30, good Lord. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this has been your look at the astrology of May 19th through 25th, 2025. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify. You can book a consultation with me, and I will see you all. Oh, and join me for my webinar. Saturn is a planet I love, and we can learn a lot of deep and powerful things about getting into the stuff about Saturn, one of the most important planets in astrology. So it'll be on Wednesday, 8 p.m. You can still register and get the recording if you can't join me live, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.